Hello, and welcome to the Mythology Chronicles. My name is Sam, and today we are finally going into some Greek mythology. Today we'll be talking about Hades and how the mythology compares to what is shown in the Disney movie Hercules, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Rick Riordan, and Broadway stands, you knew this was coming, the musical Hadestown by Anais Mitchell. Just a little disclaimer, I don't mean to be offensive to pagans or polytheists or anyone who may believe in deities mentioned in this series. If I do somehow offend, please say something so I can avoid it in the future. Definitions will flash across the screen as new terms are mentioned, as well as at the end of the video as per usual. Now on with the video. Despite being the oldest of the children born to the Titans Rhea and Kronos, Hades is counted as the youngest due to being the last one to escape Kronos' stomach. Hades was appointed to rule the underworld, causing him to lose all color due to leaving the mortal world behind. He only knows what's happening in the world above from what he hears from the spirits of the recently deceased. In ancient Greek times, he would have to knock on the ground when invoking Hades' name, which rarely happened, as it was the only way to get his attention. The entire underworld eventually was called Hades after the god, but the underworld had actually been around much longer than him, and it was originally called Erabos. Hades isn't just overseer of the underworld and god of the dead, although that is what most people think of when they think of him. Many forget that he is also the god of riches, as many precious metals are found underground. This is also why he was often referred to as Pluton, or the wealth giver, not to be confused with his Roman counterpart, Pluto. This was just one of many ways to avoid saying his name. There was also the other Zeus, the infernal Zeus, and the grizzly god. In addition, there was also the host of many and the attractor of man, as all eventually went to serve him. There aren't many myths about Hades, as he never really left Erabos much, but we're going to work with what we have here. We're going to start with the improvements that Hades made to the underworld. Before we get into that, however, we need to understand how Erabos worked before Hades came in. Let's begin with the 5 rivers of Erabos. The middle is an odd place to start in this list, but the middle splits into the beginning and the end in terms of how dangerous each river is. The river Acheron is number 3 on a scale of 5 for how dangerous each river is, 5 being the most. Also called the River of Pain, the Acheron began in the mortal world near a temple of the dead in Epirus. The Acheron meandered along until it plunged into Erabos, where it widened into a dark, steamy, swampy expanse that caused pain to anyone who touched its waters or heard its current. This river eventually splits into 2, the Cocytus, a 1 on the scale, and the Styx, a 5 on the scale. Cocytus is also known as the River of Wailing and runs through the plains of Erabos. It's fed by the tears of the damned, hence why you can hear the cries of tortured souls when you get too close to it. Getting too close will also send you into a depression, but touching it will send you into a far worse one. Styx is also known as the River of Hate and is the most famous river in Erabos. The Styx circled Erabos like a moat, meaning you had to cross it when you entered, which was a problem in itself. Dark and sluggish water was corrosive to mortal flesh. Even spirits would dissolve trying to cross it without aid. The daemon son of Nyx, Charon, recognized this issue and built a boat to ferry souls for any amount of gold and silver he saw fit. If he liked you, just 1 or 2 coins will suffice. If not, he would demand a fortune. The river Phlegethon, or the River of Fire, is a 2 on the danger scale, believe it or not. It roars through the underworld caverns like gasoline, filling the air with smoke and fumes, and cutting channels in the black volcanic rock, also lighting everything blood red until the river turns into a waterfall leading into Tartarus. Drinking from it wouldn't kill you, just cause you pain to the point you wish you were dead, as it was designed to make you suffer for eternity. Many damned souls had to swim for all eternity or be stuck up to their necks. Legends say that it could burn away your sins and set you free if you were really truly sorry for what you did. Finally, 4th on the danger scale is the River Leif, or the River of Forgetfulness. It looks harmless, a gentle span of milky white water rolling over a shallow bed of stones in most places. Technical issues here. I was trying to explain how its beauty is a false sense of security because a drop wipes your short term, but a full sip or a wade erases everything. This was a blessing to some because you can't mourn what you can't remember, but if you chose to reincarnate, you had to drink. Poppies also grow along the banks, which is why opium works the way it does. At some point, it curves around Hypnosis's cave. And then there was the issue of not everyone going where they should, or unfairly going where they belonged. Souls were supposed to all go to one of 3 places to call eternal home. The Fields of Punishment for the truly horrid, where lies an eternity of torture. The Fields of Asphodel, where most end up. It's pretty much the equivalent of the medium place, where you just wander trying to remember who you are and why you're there. And Elysium, for the truly good and only the truly good, where you can either choose to reincarnate or just chill for eternity. Souls, before Hades took over, didn't exactly do this and went where they wanted. Souls were also judged for the afterlife while they were still alive. 3 living judges would interview you before you died and decide where to put you, but just like real corrupt judges, they could be fooled and bribed, which happened all the time. Hades saw all of what was happening and decided that enough was enough. It was time for some changes. Hades went to Zeus and explained the state of the underworld, proposing that judges should be spirits of the dead rather than living people. Spirits are impossible to influence as they can literally see through you, and proposed they be 3 former kings as their use of passing judgment. Zeus agreed on the condition that these kings were his children, and so the kings Minos, Iacchos, and Rhadamanthus were chosen. To further solve the issue, Hades utilized the 3 Furies as enforcement, as their fiery whips caused excruciating pain even to spirits, and they could fly invisibly. Hades also let them design new tortures for the souls in the fields of punishment and set them after mortal beings who committed truly horrific crimes. Hades was also able to convince Hermes to look for lost souls on the mortal side of the Styx and steer them in the right direction to Charon's ferry, now costing a regulated price of 1 silver coin for everybody. Through the use of dream daemons called Oneiroi, who would visit mortals in their sleep to give visions and nightmares, Hades ensured that mortals took funeral rites seriously. Otherwise, no one treated Erabos, causing you to haunt the mortal world as a ghost forever. The Oneiroi are also the reason you have those dreams where you feel like you're falling. They pick you up and drop you just because. Next time that happens, just knock on the ground and tell Hades to tell them to knock it off. Hades also got a guard dog named Cerberus, who has 3 heads, razor-sharp fangs and claws, a mane of snakes, and a serpent tail. In addition, Elysium got even better because souls who managed to live 3 virtuous lives in a row got to live on the Isles of the Blessed, private islands in Elysium. Sometimes, if you pissed Hades off enough, he'll come up with a torture plan for you himself. We see this in 2 cases: Tantalus and Sisyphus. Tantalus was invited to dine with the gods, and he got a bit greedy. He asked to take some home to share and was denied, causing Tantalus to feel angry and insulted. He invited the gods to dine at his place and planned to serve the most insulting meal possible. He couldn't think of anything until his son, Pelops, walked in. I don't know what the deal was with great kings and their sons, but Tantalus decided to serve the gods a steaming plate of Pelops. Once the gods figured out what they were eating, they were horrified, understandably. Zeus blasted Tantalus to ashes and asked Hades to give him a special punishment, something with food. Tantalus's punishment is to stand in waist-high water that shrinks up when he tries to drink it underneath a branch of a fruit tree that retreats when he grabs for it. This is actually where the word tantalizing comes from. Sisyphus, on the other hand, was afraid of death. He was afraid of death to the point where he knocked out Thanatos with a stone pestle, gagged him, tied him up, and shoved him under the bed when he appeared at his doorstep. Nobody noticed that the god of death was missing for a little bit. People had stopped dying, which was fine until 2 Greek cities started warring and Ares noticed that nobody was dying. He became suspicious and started looking for Thanatos, finding him under Sisyphus's bed, both gods vaporizing Sisyphus on the spot. This guy somehow got an audience with Hades himself and asked to go back to the mortal world long enough to scold his wife for not giving the proper funeral rites and sacrifices to the gods. Hades allowed it, not believing that the dead could lie, and Sisyphus gathered his remains back into his body and kept a low profile for a few years. It wasn't until Thanatos asked him about it one day that Hades ever thought about him again, and Hermes was immediately sent to look for him. When Hermes found him, he threw him to the foot of Hades' throne, where he was given his punishment. Roll this boulder to the top of that hill. It sounds like it could be a lot worse, but here's the catch. Every time he neared the top, the boulder would roll back down, making this task impossible. Thanatos stopped showing up to people's doors after that and just began to sneak up on his victims. Perhaps the most famous myth surrounding Hades is the abduction of his wife, Persephone. Hades had fallen for her, but she didn't give in easily, so Hades had hatched a plan. When she was out gathering flowers, he made an indescribably beautiful flower bloom right in front of her. Once picked, the ground beneath her opened up, and Hades appeared to take her to the underworld. Her mother, Demeter, was distressed about her absence and began fasting and wandering aimlessly. After 9 days, Hecate and Helios told her what happened, causing Demeter to leave Olympus. After a year, the gods became concerned about a famine, seeing as the earth had become barren without Demeter. Zeus sent the gods one by one to convince her to come back, but she only wanted her daughter back. Eventually, Hermes was sent for Hades with the request of Persephone's return. Hades complied, but to keep her bound to the underworld, Hades had her eat a pomegranate seed before she left. A compromise was made. Hades would spend a third of the year with his wife, and her mother got her the rest of the time. It's hard to say if Hades and Persephone were ever happy, really. It's unclear if they even had kids. Persephone had a daughter named Melanoi, a daemon in charge of ghosts and nightmares. But it's unclear if Hades is his father. Some poems mention Macaria, the goddess of blessed peaceful deaths and daughter of Hades and Persephone, but there are no stories about her. Unlike humans, gods don't really do the whole loyalty thing. There was an ocean nymph named Leuc, one of the Titan Oceanus' daughters, who he met while visiting her father. Hades abducted her and took her to the underworld, and Persephone wasn't too happy with that. She wanted her dead, but instead of killing her, Hades just turned her into the first poplar tree, which multiplied and now dot the fields of Asphodel, where Hades' palace was. Poplars especially grew along the rivers, almost like they knew where they came from. Then there was a naiad named Minthe. Minthe was the daughter of the Cocytus, and Hades found her near that exact river. She was kind of miserable being a naiad where there wasn't really much nature, so Hades promised to take her to the upper world for the low price of one kiss. She agreed, and they ended up in Pylos. It was then that Hades remembered that it was springtime, and he'd rather not have his wife find out about this one, so he dipped back to Erabos. Minthe wasn't too happy about being left on a hillside, so she started yelling about how Hades loved her and how she was better than Persephone. That caught Persephone's attention. It was then that the goddess appeared as a 50-foot colossus in a funnel cloud of petals and squashed Minthe flat, creating the mint plant. Creative liberties have definitely been taken when it comes to portraying Hades in anything. It's very rare to find anything where he's a character that isn't, in some way, a villain. For example, in Disney's Hercules, Hades is the main villain. He tries to steal Olympus from Zeus because he hates his job and hates the underworld. The Hades shown in mythology is nowhere near this malevolent. Another example is the musical Hadestown, where he is, once again, the main villain. He becomes more cold and uncaring as his relationship with Persephone grows distant, and believes that totalitarian control of his workers, who he thinks of as his children, has set them all free. He seeks out Eurydice as a replacement for Persephone, saying in the song chant, "If you don't even want my love, I'll give it to someone who does, someone grateful for her fate, someone who appreciates the comfort of a gilded cage." This was not the case at all, but we'll get into the real myth Hadestown is based on next episode. Hades also does run an underground foundry that produces coal cars and oil drums, but that one's a bit more obvious. The closest portrayal I have ever seen is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Funny enough, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is close to hitting all four things we could compare with. There are the original books, a musical based on the first book, The Lightning Thief, which is really good, please stream the Lightning Thief musical, and, as much as I hate to acknowledge them, the Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters movies. It was also announced back in May that Disney Plus is in very early development for a TV adaptation, which I personally cannot wait for because Rick Riordan will actually be working closely with the creative team this time to avoid Movies 2.0. But back to the topic at hand. Hades in this series is the closest to an accurate portrayal I have come across. Hades' more passive nature is shown, though he does have plenty of bad guy moments. In The Lightning Thief, his Helm of Darkness was stolen as well as Zeus's Master Bolt, but unlike his brother, Hades doesn't make a big show of it and starts short himself, with the help of the Furies. This leads to him finding out that Percy is an unclaimed son of Poseidon, and takes his mom as a bargaining chip, believing Percy had stolen his helm under the orders of Poseidon. Furthermore, he was probably a bit peeved that Percy existed in the first place, since he, Poseidon, and Zeus had agreed not to have any more children after World War II, due to a prophecy claiming that one of their kids would either be the downfall or salvation of Olympus. Zeus had previously broken this oath by having Talia Grace, who Hades had killed in retaliation for the murder of Nico and Bianca D'Angelo's mother, Maria, right after the oath was sworn. Zeus was aiming for the kids so they couldn't grow up to be the children of the prophecy, but Hades protected them last minute and put them in the Lotus Hotel for 70 years. I forgot to mention that the Lotus Hotel is actually based off the Lotus Eaters, who were a race of people living on an island dominated by the lotus tree. The lotus fruits and flowers were the primary food of the island and were a narcotic, causing the inhabitants to sleep in peaceful apathy. The Lotus Hotel worked on the same principle, which is why Nico and Bianca were able to live there and survive for 70 years with seemingly no time passing, having not aged a day. In the fifth book, The Last Olympian, Hades stays out of the Battle of Manhattan in favor of training Nico to be the hero of the prophecy when he turns 16, and be king of the gods, with the help of Demeter and Persephone. Nico eventually convinces the god and goddesses otherwise to fight, as it'll be the only way that the Olympians will appreciate him. And Nico was right. Hades was later welcomed as a savior and got his own cabin at Camp Half-Blood after Percy pointed out how unfair it was that only the 12 Olympians had cabins. Even Artemis had a cabin, which was only really handy if her hunters happened to be in the area. That is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Down below are the links to mine and the channel's Instagrams, as well as the channel's Twitter. You'll also find a link to my main channel and links to my podcast, Storytime with Sammy, which uploads every Sunday and Wednesday. Speaking of Wednesdays, don't forget to look into the Curio Cabinet with Aaron on Wednesday, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell to know when we upload. I'll see you again in a couple of weeks, and if you miss me in the meantime, I'll be in the Friday group videos. Bye!